Get that girl out of my courtroom! The judge thundered, his gavel slamming down. The guards moved fast, too fast for a child who barely reached their shoulders. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "If you free my dad, I'll make you walk again." Laughter filled the room, cold, cruel, echoing off marble walls. To them, she was just a poor black girl from the slums begging for a criminal. But what they didn't know was that in less than 10 minutes, the laughter would stop forever. Have you ever seen someone mocked only for fate to turn everything upside down? Tell us in the comments. Before we begin, hit subscribe. It's appreciated. The morning sun barely reached the cracked windows of a one-room apartment on the city's forgotten edge. 13-year-old Amara helped her father into his work boots, the same pair worn down by years of cleaning the courthouse floors where men in suits never looked him in the eye. He smiled at her, tired but proud. "One day, baby girl," he said softly, "you'll change the world in ways they'll never expect." Her father, Elijah Brooks, was known in their neighborhood as a kind man with rough hands and an easy laugh. He worked nights, sometimes sleeping only a few hours before heading out again. The courthouse was his world. He swept its floors, polished its steps, and greeted everyone, though few ever remembered his name. But Amara did. To her, he was the strongest man alive. Then, one rainy evening, everything changed. A robbery at the courthouse left a guard injured and cash missing. Elijah was the only black man on duty that night. Within hours, police burst through their door, tore through their home, and dragged him away in front of Amara. He shouted his innocence, but no one listened. The evidence was thin, the witnesses uncertain, but the judge didn't care. To them, a janitor from the projects was easier to blame than to believe. Weeks later, Amara sat in the back of the courtroom, her small frame lost in the wooden benches. Her father's hands trembled as the judge, a man known for his cold smile and iron will, declared him guilty. Then, in a strange twist of fate, that same judge suffered an accident that left him paralyzed from the waist down. Everyone said it was karma. But for Amara, it was more than that. It was a sign. If you were Amara, just 13, powerless, and watching your father be destroyed by a system built to ignore people like you, what would you do? Amara stopped going to school. Every morning, she sat by the courthouse steps, clutching a faded photo of her father. People passed by without a glance. Lawyers, clerks, officers, each too busy or too proud to see her. The newspapers called Elijah Brooks the janitor who betrayed justice. But Amara knew the truth. Her father couldn't even afford the kind of lawyer who might have believed him. The case had been too quick, too neat. The missing money was never found, and the injured guard, one with a record of lying under oath, changed his story 3 times. But the judge, Harold Kemp, didn't care. His decision was final. Within a week, Elijah was sent away for 15 years. When the news spread that Judge Kemp had been in a car crash that left him paralyzed, the city buzzed with whispers. "Serves him right," some said. "No man is untouchable forever." But Amara didn't want revenge. She wanted her father home. She started visiting the hospital where the judge stayed, guarded and silent in his private wing. The nurses pitied her, thinking she was lost. She wasn't. Amara had read every book she could find on healing, faith, energy, miracles, anything that gave her hope. Every night, she whispered prayers into the cracked ceiling of her apartment, asking for one chance to make the judge see the truth. One afternoon, she found the courage to step into the hospital lobby. The guard stopped her immediately, asking why a child from that part of town was there. Her hands shook as she held up a note. "Please let me see him. I can help." They laughed, one of them tossing her note into the trash. But Amara didn't leave. She returned every day. Rain or shine, she waited, until one nurse, a kind woman with tired eyes, took pity on her and slipped her inside. The room smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair. Judge Kemp sat by the window, unmoving, his once commanding eyes dulled. Amara stood there, trembling, before whispering, "Judge, if you free my dad, I'll make you walk again." He turned slowly, scanning her torn shoes, her trembling hands. Then came the laughter, cold, echoing, cruel. The nurse tried to hush it, but the damage was done. To him, she was a child desperate enough to believe in magic. What he didn't know was that the girl he mocked carried something no one expected, a secret her father had taught her long before prison. Bars and courtroom lies. Because Amara's mother hadn't just left them years ago, she'd been a healer. And now Amara was about to prove it. But the question was, would anyone believe her before it was too late? The next morning, the hospital stirred with uneasy whispers. Some said the judge hadn't slept all night. Others claimed he'd demanded the girl be banned from the premises. Yet when Amara returned, something about his eyes was different. Less proud, more haunted. Maybe it was the pain, or maybe it was the guilt that never left him since the trial. He told the guards to let her in, just once. The nurse who'd helped her before stood nearby as Amara stepped forward, clutching a small wooden cross her father had carved before his arrest. Her voice trembled, but her eyes stayed steady. "I don't want your money," she said softly. "I just want you to feel what it's like to believe in something again." Judge Kemp tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. Months of silence had built walls around him, walls even pity couldn't break. But Amara somehow cut through them. She closed her eyes, placing her small hands over his legs. The room went still. Machines hummed. The nurse froze mid-step. At first, nothing happened. Then, a flicker, barely a twitch, ran through his left foot. He gasped, his eyes widening. The nurse dropped her clipboard, rushing to check the monitors. "That's impossible," she whispered. But it wasn't over. Amara didn't move. Her lips parted in prayer, a sound so pure it made the air feel heavy. Another twitch, then another. The judge began to cry, quietly at first, then uncontrollably. Decades of arrogance melted into disbelief. For the first time since his accident, he felt something real. Later that evening, the story spread through the hospital like wildfire. A poor girl from the slums had made the paralyzed judge move his legs. Cameras gathered. Doctors debated, but Amara didn't care. She only had one request, to reopen her father's case. At first, the court refused, but the public pressure was relentless. Videos of Amara's miracle flooded every screen. People demanded answers. Who was this girl? Who was her father? And how had a man condemned by the system raised a child so full of grace? Inside the reopened courtroom, Amara stood tall before the same people who once laughed at her. This time, silence filled the air. Judge Kemp rolled in, his hands trembling on the wheels. When their eyes met, he lowered his gaze. The evidence was re-examined. The guard confessed. He'd framed Elijah under pressure from higher-ups trying to cover missing funds. The truth shattered the courtroom like glass. The man they'd mocked was innocent all along. As Elijah walked free, the judge wept openly before him, whispering a single word: "Forgive." What do you think happened next? Would you forgive the man who stole years from your family if he finally understood your pain? Tell us in the comments. The world watched as Elijah Brooks stepped out of prison, a free man, but forever changed. His back was a little more bent, his eyes a little dimmer, yet when he saw Amara waiting by the gate, all of that melted away. She ran into his arms, sobbing, clinging to him like she'd never let go again. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but in that moment, there was only them. A father and daughter who had survived what the system tried to destroy. Judge Harold Kemp resigned the very next day. He donated half his wealth to a fund for wrongfully convicted prisoners and disappeared from public life. Some said he moved away to start over. Others whispered that he spent his days in a small church walking, slowly, painfully, but walking nonetheless. Amara and her father never spoke about the miracle again. To them, it wasn't about power or revenge. It was about faith. The kind of faith that could turn pain into purpose. Elijah began working with organizations that defended the poor, the forgotten, the accused. Amara stayed by his side, growing into a voice the city could no longer ignore. Years later, when she was asked how she forgave the man who ruined her family, Amara smiled through tears. "Because hate can't heal what love was meant to fix," she said. Her story spread far beyond the courthouse walls. shared in classrooms, churches, and across millions of screens. People called her the girl who healed the judge, but those who knew better called her something else, hope, because in a world that still judged people by their skin, Amara reminded everyone that justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about redemption. So the next time you see someone dismissed, mocked, or written off as less than, ask yourself, what if you're witnessing the start of their miracle? Show some love with a like and subscribe to stay inspired.